Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Wow, that was random. Exceptional Radio.
Good evening. It is the 24th of September. And, today I thought that the rando news of the day was New York finally, and I want to emphasize, finally banned pooping on the MTA. But it turns out that there was a recycling operation in Vietnam, and they were producing, recycled condoms. So Vietnamese police confiscated roughly 340,000 used condoms, which had been cleaned and, boiled and dried and reshaped on a wooden phallus. A wooden phallus. And the woman who was detained said that she was receiving 17 cents for every kilogram of recycled condoms. Before we think about this a little bit more, I just want to emphasize that the fine for pooping on the MTA or any New York public transit was, they added defecation to the list of containment issues or contaminant issues, but it only costs $100. But 17 cents for a kilogram of condoms. I feel like that's like a trash bag of condoms.
Yes.
Like a 13-gallon trash bag, like a common kitchen trash bag of condoms. 17 cents. I'm not sure who's getting screwed there. Well, I mean, obviously the people who are using recycled rubbers, but I just try to imagine this for a second. It's like, what kind of process would they have to go to reclaim used condoms?
The supply chain.
It's
a dirty business.
The thing about this that really, it just strikes me as unreal is condoms can't possibly cost that much to manufacture. $2 to 3 cents to make a condom. She's getting paid more to recycle them than it costs to actually make them. How can they make any money doing this?
What if they're sold at the point of transaction?
Oh, like
for
like a
more than
what
they're purposed, like what they're purchased for initially. So they're sold at a premium to the customer. Because maybe they have rules in those establishments about using them. So if people are going to go to those establishments and they're the only game in town, they can charge more.
Yeah. A brothel where you can't bring your own rubber in.
Because they don't trust you.
Oh God, they don't trust you, but they'll take your money to allow them to sleep with one of their employees.
With the condom that they provide.
She got $61.20 for that 34,000 condom load. She's only going to get $61.
I mean, I don't know what the currency exchange rate is. Also the cost of living. I don't know if it's divided into prefectures or provinces in Vietnam.
Let's see. So 17 cents is worth 3,933 Vietnamese dong. She got paid 1.4, really, 1.4 million dong. This has to be a bet. This has to be a joke. This can't be real. This is like a bad setup for a. This is a setup for just an awful joke. This has to be.
Is dong the highest denomination?
That's what their dollar is called.
Okay.
The dong. We need to change subjects. I'm just gonna start snickering about this. My apologies. My apologies. So, in about 15 years, it looks like California will have instituted a ban on the sales of gasoline powered vehicles, only in dealerships. It's not going to affect private sales, and it's not going to prevent people from using a gasoline powered vehicle in California. They just won't be allowed to buy them. So, I'm.
Is it that we won't be allowed to buy them in California, or they won't be manufactured?
They won't be able to be purchased in California.
So what about the used car market?
I mean, this is just like the used car market. They can't sell shit that was produced before 2003 already.
Oh.
Yeah.
So the gas standards, like the EPA standards, there's shit where you can't. That's why, like, only used car dealers that break the law sell shit for before 2003. And those are like little shitty mom and pops, you know, single dealerships that are operating so small and probably selling a lot of junkers and parts. So they don't actually, they might operate as a junkyard and say, oh yeah, we're a junkyard that sells used cars, and that's how they get around it. The actual, like, I had a 2003 Bonneville, and it was like just at the cutoff or something, but they were trying to give me like $500 or something stupid for it at dealerships where because of the standards for emissions that changed, all of the shit before 2003 are basically considered the value of their engine unless there's something special. Like if you have like a, you know, a Corvette or some shit, or a Mustang or an actual special car. I mean, even then, a lot of them aren't valuable any more than the cost of a running engine. And it's like they'll try to, you know, turn around and give you $500 and then turn around and sell it for $1,500. And not, you know, they're not making a shitload of money because they have to fix it up. So it's not like they're actually making $1,000 on the transaction. But this is why, again, the car industry is so weird, where the fact that people aren't going to be able to sell gasoline powered cars by then is not a big deal because there's going to be so many electric options and hybrids or whatever, you know, whatever it needs to be being produced by the car companies, that's not even an issue.
I wonder how the classic car dealers are going to get around this. Like
dealers, they're like clubs. That's how exactly how. Because
yeah,
you club and you can, like, it's the same way people do smoking clubs when there's cigarette bans. You basically buy a membership. Sometimes they're like $1, but as long as you have a paid membership, it allows you to get around a lot of these things because it's not actually an open. You can't just walk in and buy it, so it doesn't operate by the same rules. And that's it. They have these rules is so they can like do tax exempt shit on their side. So because you're effectively becoming a member of their club, they can do tax write-offs in a different way than if you were a customer, because they're buying wholesale and you're coming in and buying wholesale, so you're not actually buying retail prices, so they won't have to pay the same retail taxes because you're actually not a customer, you're part of their club. And this is how this is the difference between Sam's Club and Walmart right down the street. It's not even just that you get it cheaper as a customer, it's that they're going to turn around and write it off on their taxes as some weird ass fucking write up that you and I as plebes don't understand, because we'll never like have that amount of money to do tax loopholes with. And that's exactly why, again, it's like they just give us a discount and make us not even think about why they're doing it.
No, that's a really good point, because every time I go to Sam's Club, I think to myself, man, this giant jar of peanut butter is like, you know, it actually is cheaper if I calculate the per ounce value, but it's also like 5 pounds of peanut butter. It's gonna take me 3 to 6 months to eat.
And then if you actually go look at the Walmart prices, they're not much different.
No.
Like Sam's Club's definitely cheaper, but it's not a huge leap as to where it's like, if you don't want to buy 5 pounds of peanut butter, you just want like 1 pound, then it's like not even necessarily worth it to get the discount, because then they also trick you into buying more shit than you need. Like, you're going to go through 5 pounds of peanut butter
Eventually.
over the year, but the fact that you have pounds of peanut butter sitting there makes you eat it more and eat it quicker. And then it becomes this thing of, that's how, like, you go look at Sam's Club and all those people eat 5 pound tubs way quicker than they should, because they get into these habits of like, oh, I'm buying this for the year, and then it ends up being for the month. And it's like, that's how they're all obese.
Yeah.
You don't individually, obviously, because you're not obese. So you would never, like me saying that, I know you'd never take it personally because you're nowhere near obese.
Well,
in that,
the thing about Sam's Club that I like is that I can buy they could say it's family size, but I feel like it's like multiple family sized package of toilet paper or paper towel or cat food. And when I say cat food, instead of like a 50-pound, well, it is a 50-pound bag, but it's 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 only reasonable because I have enough space to store it. If I didn't have enough space to store that giant thing of toilet paper or paper towels or giant bag of cat food, it wouldn't work. Like I wouldn't have enough space for it. It would consume space that I need for other things.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, it does become this thing of, you need, there's people who have multiple freezers, multiple refrigerators for this very type of thing.
Yeah.
But then you realize how wealthy those people are. And then it's like, I mean, it's not even the Nancy Pelosi, $11,000 per freezer thing. It's just a matter of that, like you said, you have to have space where you're going to put the second and third freezer and refrigerator to actually make sure they're not just outside accessible, so there's a lot to being able to have a second and third refrigerator that you can actually put stuff in.
I'm just thinking about like why Sam's Club exists as a business model. Like somebody had to sit down and be like, all right, so if we get a business loan for, X number tens of millions of dollars, or we get this seed money, we'll be able to get the most out of it if we, buy goods at these particular rates and sell them at these particular rates for these discounts. And it's only because we're moving these types of merchandise that we'll be able to benefit from this financially. So it wasn't even like, oh, let's start a business where we can give people food and clothes at a decent price. It was like, let's start a business so that we can get the biggest return on the money that we're investing in this business model. And it just so happens that people are going to be purchasing like large amounts of food and inexpensive clothing from this particular location.
So it's exactly the opposite of that, but those two things are the scenarios. So it's really crazy to actually learn the history. Sam Walton was not a horrible person. He had the idea of exactly what you just said: give people access to the things they need constantly at a lower price because they have the capacity to fucking purchase at that rate. But then when he died, his fucking kids came in and like the board came in and completely undermined all that shit with Walmart. So Sam's Club did not suffer the same loss of quality that Walmart did in the late 80s, early 90s, when they were like restructuring to then do exactly what you're saying, where it's all about the dollar bin. And the dollar bin was specifically one of the things that started showing up, where they would have these really low quality byproduct toys and shit that came from China that were coming in for cents on the dollar that they would turn around and just sell for $1 at the front. So when the dollar bin culture started at Walmart, that's specifically when what you're discussing is what became of the Walton businesses. And then it's weird because he ingrained all of these really, before corporate culture got to the parasitic beast that it has become, he had these ethical inclinations that he ingrained in the company. So like there's things where I think it's Hurricane Katrina, Walmart before fucking FEMA, because they have infrastructure in place to start deploying aid for shit like that, and they have a man in the organization that they try to help the communities that they serve. So there are these things in their organization where Sam Walton tried to institute somewhat of an ethical approach. If you can have any sort of ethical corporate entity, this is going to be like how it plays out, if anything. And that's kind of where obviously they have a really bad history of not paying women equally. So it's not to say that Walmart is like anywhere near a perfect organization, but it's more so that the exploitative dollar bin culture is something that explicitly came after Sam Walton died. So it's like there's two phases to Walmart and the Walton business's existence.
So like, what's the difference then between Sam's Club and Costco?
I don't think Costco has anything to do with Sam's Club. So Sam's Club is the parent, like it's like
see, Costco is a wholesale. Costco Wholesale is a multi-billion-dollar global retailer with warehouse club operations in 8 countries.
I forget the Walton family business, but they own. And then Sam's and Walmart are together because, like I said, Sam Walton is the original like founder of the chain. I think it wasn't even called. I think Walmart wasn't called Walmart originally. It was something with his name like Waltons or something. I can look it up obviously, but I'm just trying to give the quick background in that Sam's is the club in which you get the wholesale prices, and Walmart is the store where you get the retail prices. They have almost the exact same distributors and sources for their, like the produce is going to be almost exactly the same, but Sam's Club's going to get the better produce before Walmart because they get priority as members. Sam's Club gets priority for all of their, like if you have milk, you'll have the milk go first to Sam's Club, and especially when shit starts to get shortages, you'll have, okay, say they have 100% of their eggs, 40% will be allocated for like Sam's Club, but that 40% will go first. And then if there's like a rush to get them, they might give the Sam's like 10% more and reallocate them from Walmart before they hit the shelves. So and then they'd be like, oh, we ran out of eggs, but there's really backstock that they took from their warehouse and gave it to Sam's Club before it went to either one's shelf. So Sam's Club basically gets priority because it's the members and Walmart is the customers. And this is again why they have these articulations. So then when you're a member, you're basically, it's the way they'll probably end up doing it is anytime you buy something off the shelf, they'll act as if you pre-ordered their wholesale order. and then it's just like you put money into it's like they probably do some
Oh, I
magic.
see. They're creating a virtual pool of resources which they can
Exactly,
use to
exactly.
acquire their whatever the inventory they need. And because you've already prepaid into the pool, you've already purchased it at the wholesale price, and you're just picking it up.
Exactly. And
Oh,
that's how they probably have been doing their books. So you're like, when you buy something off the shelf, they'll just be like, oh, this was ordered ahead by a member as a wholesale order. So anytime it's like they probably order just as much as to go on the shelf, and that's why they don't really have backstock, because it's like otherwise then you have extra that you have to like write off as shrink, which then is cost, and you can't keep that model if you have a bunch of shrink. So this is how they probably have zero shrink. And it's like one of these things, there's no back room in Sam's Club. It's all floor space. And these are the reasons, like, it's like slightly different with Aldi. They have a back room for stock, whereas if you go to Sam's Club, whatever's on the shelf is there. That's what it is.
speaking
So
of
like,
Aldi, the current CEO of Aldi just like I think he just sued his mom or his stepmom or his mom or something like that because she was living extravagantly, and this was in violation of the trust that the founder, the grandfather Aldi, had put in place to maintain the money. Because he and his brother, the guy that started Trader Joe's, they they survived World War II and they came back to Germany, and their family had always had a grocery store, and so they were providing discount goods to the people who needed food basically. And so they had this really strict upbringing, but apparently one of the young wives, was leading an extravagant life. I think it's like $38 million or something like that.
like a year.
No, she just uh, they were no, they embezzled like something $30 million. I gotta find this now. Yeah, the son. This was on the 17th. The son sued his mom for embezzling because there's this Aldi Air feud. Um, oh, let's see. Now I want to find this number. No, I can't find the number. Anyways, their fortune's worth like $17 billion, and she and I guess some of her daughters were skimming, and they took some money, took a little bit of money. That's just crazy to me.
Just a drop in the bucket. Just a drop in the bucket. No one's gonna notice.
No one's gonna notice $38 million.
I had started boycotting them because at the local Aldi, um, a person of color had the cops called on them by someone who thought that they stole some of the groceries because they had too many groceries in their cart. And
What?
when the person at the store heard this, they checked instead of like checking with the person who was a frequent shopper, they called the cops and had the cops check the person's like uh, groceries against the receipt, even though they just checked them out. And that's why I'm like,
That's
they
no
can't be
good.
doing that shit, and like nobody heard about it because nobody made a fucking story about it. But I saw it like, um,
Wait a second.
somebody had posted that about it was their partner on Facebook, and that's where I'm
Oh, I
like,
remember this. It's actually a friend of mine from high school. Let me see if I can find her
yeah,
page.
you know what I'm talking about then, because nobody ever covered it. It never became a news story. I haven't shopped there since I saw that, because
This
that's
was
where
an
I'm
Aldi or a Trader Joe's.
at Aldi.
Um,
And
okay, it was on August 31st.
okay,
She posts. Once again, my husband was racially profiled at a grocery store and detained by employees while they rifed through his bags and groceries because some asshole white woman in the parking lot saw a brown man running out with a cart full of stuff. Wow.
I don't know who posted that, but ever since that day, I haven't gone back to Aldi.
Well, it
Straight
was
up.
it was it was a person that I went to high school with.
Yeah,
I've met her husband. He's actually a really nice guy. like,
yeah. I mean, and that's what I'm like. I don't know the dude, and I don't know her husband, but when I saw that, I have no reason to believe she lied about that shit or just made that fucking story up for clout. And I don't want to be that dude's story because somebody calls the cops on me because my cart's too full. I run that risk by shopping at Aldi because they took the fucking Karen side instead of the customer side.
man, this
And
Karen
no,
virus is like coming on strong, and people need to inoculate. Fucking
yeah, so I guess I didn't even mark the date. So it's been 24 days. I have not fucking shopped at Aldi. And I'm
man,
again
you're like within spitting distance of their parking lot, aren't you?
exactly. That's what I'm saying. It was super
Oh
convenient.
man.
But guess what? I started getting my fucking groceries delivered.
Mm.
So yeah, fuck them.
Yeah. Speaking of the delivery, I just want to go back to the models between Sam's Club and Walmart. So Sam's Club membership looks like it costs $45 a year, and there are additional like memberships that you can get to upgrade that. And they're starting a delivery service in partnership with Instacart. Now, Walmart is coming out with a service called Walmart Plus, and it gives people.
Isn't that like Amazon Prime?
I don't know, but it's going to allow people to have materials, groceries, shopping items delivered to their homes at a cost of $98 per year,
Yeah.
or at a subscription fee of a certain number of dollars a month. But it just seems kind of odd to me that a retailer that won't get first dibs on products or produce or any kind of item that could get diverted in its own supply chain to a less costly membership delivery option is coming out with a delivery service that costs like twice as much as a membership to Sam's Club. It just seems really weird.
So
Well, I don't think you're thinking of it as a single purchase, but somebody's gonna look at it and be like, "Oh, I can afford $12 a month," even though it's actually cheaper to get the membership because these people are not good at math, so they don't think of it correctly, and that's exactly why Sam's Club is. Again, Sam Walton died in '92. It's like a stark move in there. I just looked it up just to see like, oh, if that is that when? Yeah, he died in '92, and almost immediately their culture changed so that again they're gonna exploit people not realizing that they're paying more by actually getting the $98 membership instead of just going and getting the Sam's Club because they want to keep it exclusive. It's like the whole thing about rich people is the only way they're rich is if there's poor people, in fact. So
yeah.
it doesn't like your wealth means nothing unless you have poor people to flaunt it in front of. So them having Sam's Club that they can go down the street and feel exclusive to is part of this whole thing. It's important to them. Also, they want to like mock the people through making them pay more. That's one of the things about American push purchasing or push pricing, where it like pushes you to buy 5 fucking
pounds of
peanut butter instead of just one, because you just can't get the like. There's obviously the packaging is different, but this is where if that's the case, then you should just be able to bring your own fucking peanut butter jar and like whatever you get is the price per pound because that's how they do it at the fucking grocery stores. It's like if you go and buy like bananas are equal like price if you buy 1 pound or if you buy 20 pounds because it's just per pound at that point. Like, and you can obviously get deals if you buy more, but that's where again the whole point of having that price point is to be like, I'm a customer, not a store. I need a rational amount of stuff to keep in my space. My space allows me for so many different things. And peanut butter, I eat a lot of it, but I don't eat it 5 pounds at a time. As an individual, maybe as a kitchen, I might use it 5 pounds at a time.
Yeah,
So
if
that's
you're
where,
serving, 100 plus people a day.
but that's where Gordon Food Service comes in, because
Yeah.
like that's specifically for catering and for like large events. Because my mom's been on that shit for decades, buying like she'll just go buy Gordon Food Service for like our shit and have like 10 pounds of chicken or whatever in the freezer for a couple of weeks, and it like lasts a family way longer. But most people aren't thinking that way because they're just like shopping week at a time. Like capitalism does not let you think of existence more than a week at a time, so you end up buying meal to meal, like because it makes you feel as if you don't have control over your future, so you can't even plan that far ahead to be like, yeah, I'm gonna get 5 pounds of fucking peanut butter, I'm gonna get 300 rolls of toilet paper, because capitalism's like, you might die of cancer because I'm going to overwork you before you have time to eat that peanut butter, so don't spend that money on the peanut butter. And that's the craziest shit, and that's kind of where like people live in a semi-permanent approach to how they want things to be, but on a day-to-day thought process, not realizing it's day to day, but then they're thinking that they're planning long term, not understanding why the long term shit never works out. And it's like I see this cycle happen a lot, because it's not that the person is incapable of self awareness, it's that capitalism does not give that person the luxury time to actually think farther into their future, to be like, oh, this is like what I do frequently. Let me get 5 pounds of peanut butter because I'm gonna eat like a fucking sandwich every other day. That's what I do. And that's like, I'm sick of going to the grocery store every other week. And that's why you get it. And it's like those higher level thought processes are like not really accessible to a lot of people.
So when I go to the store, and I go about once every couple weeks, I buy a thing of chicken breasts. Like usually it's like 5 or 6 of them, and they're actually all huge. I mean, I feel like they're just oversized. Like what the fuck are they feeding these things? And where one chicken breast is enough for Sheila and I, and then I'll also get a tube of ground beef, because that tube of ground beef is like 4 meals, or actually more like, yeah, like 4 giant hamburger meals, ground beef meals. I can make a split that into 4. I can make a soup, and then we can have hamburgers, and I can make a meatloaf, and then there's some kind of meatball thing, and then I'll also try and find some like pork chops. And this is like, I usually end up having a surplus, and it usually lasts longer than the 2 week interval. And I feel like I could probably plan out, um, if it wasn't for the storage of vegetables, which don't really last as long as I'd like them to. If I had like, a big ass freezer, I could probably plan out like a month worth of food purchases all at once. But the reality is, I don't have a way to keep vegetables or fruits fresh for that long, and I don't want to eat canned fruits or vegetables. And I don't. I mean, I'll do the frozen vegetable thing when certain vegetables are out of season, but there's a point where I'm not a restaurant, so I can't go through volumes of food quickly, and I only have so much freezer space. Like even if I wanted to, I don't think I could. I suppose I could buy a freezer, but I realize that not everyone has that kind of option. This is like a this is a really tangled web here. Like you can't buy more than you can store. Well, you can, but then it limits your options with other food options. And then even if you do buy them and you go with the limited food options, eventually you're driven back to you incremental purchases, because nobody wants to eat peanut butter sandwiches every day.
Well, and then, with something like peanut butter, it can last a lot longer than um, produce or,
Yeah.
obviously something that's more perishable.
Yeah.
Um, but even then, yeah, like that capacity to take part of it and freeze it and only use as much as you need at a time and unfreeze it. That, you know, that is a long term thinking step that does, uh, when people get deep freezers, it's like, that's some shit your grandparents have. And, you know, even a lot of rich people don't necessarily have deep freezers because they're not thinking that way.
Yeah.
Or like people that do, hunt and um, bag a deer or a buck or some shit and have hundreds of pounds of meat at a time. They'll definitely be more inclined to have deep freezers and or maybe they're salting their shit and drying it. Everybody doesn't have, you don't have to freeze it to preserve it. That's they didn't have freezers thousands of
Smoke
years
it.
ago.
Yeah. Smoke it. I've got a friend down in Texas who he's got like a developing YouTube thing called I'll Smoke Anything, and it's about barbecue. And some of the stuff comes out fantastic looking. Like makes me want to down there. And, I've got a standing invitation to go down there and accompany him on one of his like duck hunts or one of those type of excursions. And when I think about like the complexity of smoking meat, I've got to provide a little bit more foundation for this. We picked up a Sheila's Papa gave us a bad Mamma Jamma auger fed pellet smoker, and it's uses fancy little wooden pellets to smoke your meat. It's basically an outdoor oven. It'll go from anywhere from like 200 degrees all the way up to 550 degrees, and it jammed up on us because we used it and turned it off before it had finished, you know, combusting all of its fuel, incinerating its fuel. And so we had to disassemble this thing. And I was just cursing this fancy technology the whole time. I kept thinking, it's like, man, I never had this problem with a good old fashioned wood chip smoker or any grill for that matter. But when I think about that kind of stuff, it's like that was you're right. That was the original. That was like the original. How do we preserve meats for extended periods of time? And it predates curing. But we've come so far with that auger fed meat smoking oven that relies on a motor, an electric motor.
Yeah, cured meats are insanely good.
Oh
I had
yeah.
no idea until I tried, but that shit is crazy that something can not be refrigerated for so long and taste so good.
Like an aged cured ham leg or you know, as much as I like to hate on Italy, I feel like Italy has produced like a wider diversity of cured meats that are all delicious than I realize. Like when I think about it, when I actually think about it, all of those sausages and all of those like what's that stuff called? Um, not prosciutto. It's not pepperoni. It's
Another food preservation technique is just drying it out. Like there's a Norwegian.
sopressata. That's it. Sopressata. That's like one of my favorites. It's not quite salami. It's not quite pepperoni. It's not prosciutto. It's its own thing. That stuff's good. Now I'm looking at pictures of cured meats. I'm going to share a list of cured meats. See, I feel like that's the kind of thing that you should be able to get at Sam's Club or Costco. I'm sure they've got that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I feel like that's the kind of thing that would actually be advantageous to be a part of a wholesale food produce club, is that an entity like that would be able to purchase a larger volume or secure a larger supply at a better price. I guess that doesn't. No, I mean a grocery store chain should be able to do that too at a high level.
They used to be able to, but they all got consolidated.
Yeah.
And you know, I worked in grocery stores in multiple grocery stores for years, so I saw the supply chains for produce change, and then I saw the meat supply chains change, and everything started to shift and get more and more consolidated.
And
So
here we
now,
are in the midst of global pandemic, and all these hyper efficient supply chains turn out to be, not quite what we thought they would be.
yep. And part of it was they got less local in the process. So because they were more consolidated and seasonal, the produce would be every winter. A lot of the shit would be coming from Chile or
Mm.
um, you know, down in South America, and it's like you can do that when there's not a pandemic, but when there's a pandemic, good luck. And recently, they started getting more and more produce from China, and that shit was like, you know, the produce itself wasn't sketchy. It was the chemicals on the produce that was sketchy.
Yeah.
Um, then making it through customs and shit. It's not even necessarily the farming. It's like to keep the bugs off of it going through customs and all that during shipping that ended up being a lot of the problem. So the
I
supply chain has different problems at different parts.
wonder.
especially with things like diversion and counterfeit.
Oh
Things that
man, counterfeit sausage. That's just wrong.
like I've heard of like plastic making it into bags of rice, like in various ratios.
Mm.
Yeah, now that you say that, I do think there was a counterfeit produce problem for a while. I mean, look, because I do recall something like that.
For when you talk about the supply chain, I think about the need for it to have evolved so that as many people as possible could have access to the opportunity to purchase if they have the resources, the opportunity to purchase, produce of some kind or, you know, raw meat that they can cook or, you know, grains of some kind, fresh bread. Um, so varying qualities too, but there isn't as much of a focus on gathering from the environment anymore because it just doesn't seem to be feasible or possible. Like there,
What foods are readily available to be
exactly,
developed in
exactly.
like Arizona? What
Right.
what can you actually grow in Arizona? Cattle maybe in northern Arizona where it's
Well, when I think about that question, I try and consider, or I probably should be better educated on, who was living in Arizona before and was surviving in Arizona before, and how are they surviving in that area?
they've got a $23 billion agricultural economy. And they grow vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, wheat, hay, cotton, eggs, and beef and milk. And they export to 70 countries countries and across the United States. Huh. Cattle and dairy are the leading agricultural products. Huh. Second in the nation for cantaloupe and honeydew melons and lemon production. That's actually quite impressive. Lots of hay, lots of lemons, wheat, cotton, cantaloupe, spinach, cauliflower. I learned something new. Although these pictures that I'm looking at of Arizona don't look like the Arizona that I've seen.
Is it like very lush and verdant?
Yeah, it looks more like Kansas than the desert.
What about terraforming?
Isn't geoengineering illegal? Geoengineering. Oh, they got a $4 million grant from NOAA. The government is.
I know with the right irrigation technologies and the appropriately placed bodies of water can turn a very arid desert into a place where you can grow produce pretty effectively.
Yeah. Okay, so there were pink lady apples being counterfeited in China. I was not making that up. There's specific types of apples, and pink lady is one of them. There's like genetic ownership for some of these things. So if a company owns a specific apple's genes, then counterfeiting it is actually a big business. So that's kind of how you end up with like counterfeit apples. It's really crazy.
I also found an article about counterfeit eggs in China.
Well, I know that there were some farmers in India who got in trouble for growing potatoes. They
Oh yeah,
they lo-
they got the seed. Their crops were pollinated by the.
the
It was like
neighboring mega
Monsanto
farm.
or something. Yeah, they got the genetically altered seeds, and their shit got.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's
Monsanto like came after them, right?
yeah, they got screwed by Monsanto. But it's interesting. I remember reading like in the vein of cross pollination. I remember reading about an organic farmer who was suing one of their neighbors because their neighbor's field was not organic, and all of their everything was being blown onto their organic fields. And I can't remember what the outcome was, but I kept thinking about it. It's like what a what can somebody actually do? Because nobody can control the weather yet. I mean,
I mean,
their neighbors are licensed farmers. They've got the big farm. They've got all that
They
stuff.
should just build a wall.
yeah, you can't really do anything in the real world, so that's probably why they tried to sue him and just be annoying and get him to move or some shit. So it's not, you can't build a gigantic fan or something.
A bit.
Not in the world.
I mean, how much electricity would you have to consume to prevent cross pollination from neighboring fields? I think that would be
Maybe
that's the kind of
like
geoengineering that's probably banned.
right. Well, because it would probably have to be some sort of like ionic micro mesh that's gonna like shock anything that comes through it.
A giant
That's even
electric fence.
A
yeah,
giant unidirectional Dyson.
yeah, exactly, and
Oh
that's kind
man.
of where that'll start killing bees and birds and anything that goes through it just to get the pollen. And yeah, like that type of shit would be illegal because it
Birds
would
would be attracted to it because of its magnetic field.
right, and then they would instantly die when they
It'd
flew into it.
be a giant bug zapper. Oh
Yeah,
man.
giant everything zapper, and that's like
I don't think humans would even be able to live near it.
exactly, and that's why it's like one of these things where the only way to actually stop that type of uh, cross pollination is something that would then make the area uninhabitable. Yeah, you can't you can't really be that dumb and then have the money to sue somebody. It's really weird how those two things happen in America.
That's probably a good thing. It's probably a good thing that horrible ideas like that are prohibitively expensive, and people who are good at generating revenue, they're probably not going to go off on some wild errand of let's build a giant magnetic screen to kill the pollen that's coming in and fucking up our fields. I think farmers are a little bit more conservative than that. I could be wrong though.
What about domes? Put a dome over the crops with HEPA filters or something.
Farming dome. Farming domes are a real thing. Holy crap.
Yeah.
It's not just an image from a video game. Holy shit.
Welcome to Farming Dome.
I mean, clearly these things are like the goal is to build them and on another planet. Almost all of the imagery I see is basically like a concept designed for Mars. It also says farming on Mars. And then they've got giant climate control systems. The real ones. There's a dome in Japan that's so big you can't see the edges of it. It just looks like fog at the distance. That's actually kind of cool.
That's a farming dome?
Yeah.
Nice.
They're basically just greenhouses that are shaped like built around a geodesic grid. It's not really a grid. It's a triangle. Yeah, it is a grid. It's a triangle grid.
Isn't there a movie about people living in one of those?
Oh God, Polly Shore, biodome.
Yes, biodome.
Having Polly Shore and oh what was his name?
Was it one of the
It's one of the
Baldwin,
Baldwins.
like Steven or something?
One of the I don't know which one it was, but apparently I remember that the additional the addition of their
Steven?
bodies threw off the equilibrium so bad that it caused the place to go toxic or something like that. And they threw a party and broke the seal, and everything was about to die because Polly Shore.
I remember seeing that movie with like 5 people in the theater or something. Because
5
nobody.
people in total.
Yeah.
I've been to movies where I've been the only person in the theater.
That's
It
what
wasn't a matinee.
that's what happened. Well, I went to a matinee of Captain Marvel, and I was like the only person in the theater. It was great, except for
Yeah,
my
I love
shoes
that.
kept sticking to the floor.
That's like a very common thing that occurs in movie theaters. It's happened to me plenty.
If you wear the right shoes, it actually makes it really easy to slide your feet out of your shoes. But then,
If they stick to the floor and you slide your feet out of the shoes.
yeah, it makes it easy.
Yes,
It makes it
like
easy to get comfortable. That's also really gross.
it is gross.
And that was, now that I think about it, that was the last time I've been to a movie theater because the show plays 12, whatever the one on the west side is. Um, I went there because Chris was like, "You got to go see this movie in a theater. It's really good," and he was right. It was really good. It was definitely worth seeing in a theater, except for the seats. I remember when that theater was brand new and those seats were like, you know, virgin movie theater seating, and I don't remember them being quite so nasty. Like when the lights come on and you can actually see the theater. Hopefully, those things have changed in this, COVID world that we've had to, adapt to.
Wasn't there a bed bug issue?
Oh, I'm sure there was movie theaters with bed bugs. Let's see.
They definitely had one because that's one of the reasons I stopped going. It was right after Captain Marvel happened.
How
They
to
had a
avoid bed bugs in a movie theater. Avoid the movie theater.
Is that what it said?
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta. It's because the people don't throw away trash. They put it below the seats. Gives the bed bugs a place to hide and food to consume. Let's see. Top
well,
two.
it's just like I was watching an episode of Bob's Burgers where the entire premise was the mom was sick and she was trying to she was trying to go to this um, Mother's Day Mother's Day play or something, and it's like the only reason she didn't go was just because she was too sick to actually leave. She was gonna go if she could have made it. And most Americans used to live. I mean, a lot of them still do, but that approach where, especially work, where you're like, oh, I gotta go to work. It's like, motherfucker, stay home. You gotta
Yeah.
get everybody else sick. They're like, no, I need the money. And it's like, well, that's some selfish ass shit, but everybody's selfish as fuck. So
Yeah.
it's to be.
In oh, this doesn't have a date. So, Travel Channel has a list, top 10 list of places to accidentally pick up bed bugs. And it includes the public library, retail stores, movie theaters, planes, trains, and buses, daycares, schools, colleges, places of worship, business offices, laundry facilities, hospital and nursing homes, consignment thrift shops, and yard sales. Well, that sounds like pretty much everywhere anyone goes.
Pretty
So I suppose there's been some sort of like low key bed bug infestation issue across everywhere that people just don't talk about because it's too terrifying to think of. Like, is there some sort of insurance policy that airlines and bus lines take out on themselves, like for bed bug related cleanup issues or remediation? Like, oh, yeah, we got to take, like 50 buses off of this route out of commission for like deep cleaning. So we have, however many millions of dollars to compensate for that, or hundreds of thousands of dollars to compensate for that. And they're not obligated to report it or anything because all they have to do is decommission them and put them back because they're showing that they're dealing with the situation.
God, I wonder what kind of chemical bomb they unleash in a bus or a plane.
Maybe that's why they smell so weird.
Well, we know that the buses and trains in New York smelled so weird because people were shitting in the facilities. But
Yes. Oh, what different kind of smell profiles here, I think. One's like a very chemical.
so the MTA has been around for 55 years. It took them 55 years to ban defecating in the facilities, like on the bus or on the platform or on the subway itself. 55 years. Because
I wonder how many it came up at the meeting and they're like, no, we're cool. Not this year. It's only been 35 shits on the subway. We can not ban it. It's cool.
They're like a shit quota.
55 years. I gotta break out my trusty calculator. So 55
Some
years times
at every meeting
52.
kept bringing it up and was
So
like,
that's 2,860 weeks. That's got to be 2,860 meetings if they do weekly meetings to discuss, operations. There may have been over almost 3,000 opportunities to bring up shitting on the shit on the bus or on the train or on the subway, and they didn't do anything. That's 16
The
years
governor must
longer
have
than I've
been
been
aware.
alive.
I know every week that somebody had to clean it up. They came at me. I had to clean up shit this week. We need to fucking ban shitting on the subway.
I bet whoever's been cleaning up after people on the subway has been saying that since 55 years ago, and they just weren't listening to them because they didn't want to spend the money, or they just couldn't like map the process of like how to keep people from doing it in the first place. Like this has to be like phase one of the like don't shit on the subway or on the bus
Well, it's finally a
initiative.
problem. It's finally a problem.
Yeah,
The
right.
UV lights that they would bring in and wave over everything weren't sufficient to clean up the poo.
Right. They had to call in the big guns on that one, I guess. Now it's in the news. Now everybody knows about it. People come home after work and talk to their families about people, using the facilities, as it were. And these are the voters. These are the constituents, and they don't want to have to think about that anymore. So it's either gonna go away after this, and nothing's gonna change anyways, and people are gonna be fined hundreds of dollars that they don't have, or people are actually going to stop doing it. But they have to actually figure out how to get people to stop doing it, because the people who probably do it to begin with aren't concerned with the fine. Like they are desperate enough to use that as a location for like shelter for a moment so that they don't have to be exposed to the elements while they relieve themselves. Like that's desperation. That's a whole other level of like social dynamic to be discussed to try and mitigate this kind of an occurrence. Like you can't find someone $100 that they don't have. Like what are you going to do? Start putting people in jail, calling them into court? These people can't afford lawyers. You're going to overpopulate your jails with people who are basically sheltering themselves or taking shelter on the trains, on the buses. These people may have mental illnesses. They need to have medical evaluations. There's like more to it than just saying I'm going to fine you $100 for pooping on the train.
So back in 2019, there was a trashy train photo contest, and the top, all of the images so far that I've looked at, all contain some version of poop or vomit. So this is, there was a photo contest for this a year ago.
Like people going out of their way to capture these occurrences.
I don't, from the looks of it, they didn't have to go out of their way. They just had to get their camera out.
uh,
I'm, I feel pretty confident that this has been going on for as long as people have been on the trains and needed to shit really bad and couldn't get off. God, that's just,
A whole lot of mental illness.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, how
I
do you?
mean, man, they have a lot of people being ignored down there
Yeah,
up on the subway.
There are people who like live in abandoned parts of the subway systems in New York.
yeah.
Like there have been documentaries about those communities of people. Like,
Sorry about that.
Man, I mean, they banned dogs on New York City subway unless they're in a bag. Like they had to be able to fit inside of a shoulderable bag because
What-
they were crapping.
yeah, there's logic behind that.
Oh, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You can't really put
There's
a
even
human in a
logic behind
bag.
telling human beings not to do it, but it's just the root cause isn't it's not somebody who's afraid of the fine.
Yeah, I bet the people who are going to end up getting fined don't even know that there's a fine. So it's like,
Yeah.
you think they just? I mean, I guess maybe if they added toilets, it wouldn't even matter.
I,
Is
I,
that
I still feel like there's some frat dude out there who's gonna go shit on the subway to get the fine just
right?
so he can
Yeah.
like put it on YouTube. Hey guys, check it out! I just got a ticket for shitting on the subway.
Yep, that dude exists. Too many of those dudes exist.
I'm pretty sure I've met that dude at some point.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I'm pretty sure we all went to college with that guy at some point.
But yeah, I think I've definitely encountered that guy and all of his friends.
So when I was going to IU, I found a bowling ball like behind a Subway sandwich shop, and I brought it home and set it next to the steps to my at my front porch, and it quickly became the fire hydrant, so to speak, for myself and my friends. And one day, actually, Chris, you know Neil, he came over to my house with a buddy, a mutual friend, and he saw the bowling ball and he went to pick it up, and I stopped him. I said, "No, don't do that." And he's like, "Why? Why not?" And I told him that's what we did, and I was like, and I was joking, like, "Man, I'm just waiting for somebody to shit on it." And he dropped trowel, turned around, and dropped the deuce. And it was actually one of the most impressive things I've ever seen because I don't think I've ever seen anyone just like drop the deuce on command. But
That's
I'll never
crazy.
forget that.
Whoa.
We hosed it off like immediately.
Whoa. That's like holy shit.
Yeah.
How scatological.
Oh,
Yeah, we're digging deep here, guys.
Brace yourselves.
So, while we're on the topic, a buddy of mine and I made a student film for another friend. Oh, another friend of ours was in a class, and they were doing this Dada thing, and so he asked us to help him make a short film, and he ended up not having very much time to do any of the planning session, and we just ran with it because we thought, oh, this will be so much fun. Let's do it. And at the end of it all, we were gonna have some guy shitting on a plate, like a paper plate, and he came over to my place, same residence, and we all hung out for like 12 hours. I watched him drink a gallon of prune juice and still nothing. You know, it was well into the next morning. It was like we started and it was still light out, and like the next morning when it was bright out, like 7, 8 in the morning, he was finally able to go after a gallon of prune juice.
The body wants what the body wants.
I feel like prune juice should be more effective than that. It should have been like, you know, 8 hours,
So did you get the
6 hours.
shot?
Oh yeah, we got the shot. And the film was played at a local art festival, and we played it, and the projector guy, whatever, they didn't have any way to get sound out of our camera for some reason. They didn't have any cables to connect to the mixer, and so it had music, but it turned out to be a silent film. And in the middle of this presentation, the guy at the projector was like, "Man, this is really good." And I said, "How can you tell?" And he said, "Because they're not saying anything." The crowd was completely silent the whole time. And so my buddy who gave us the idea, he's like, "Can I take this and show this to my class?" And so he did, and the instructor loved it. It was really surreal. I mean, the movie itself, the film was surreal on its own. It had no real point other than two people were creating some kind of contract, and this guy had to shit on a plate.
You know, the concept of the artist and the transformation of the artist's excrement into gold or into art is a theme that was addressed in Alejandro Jodorowsky's The Holy Mountain.
Where did that noise? I mean, I remember you brought that up the other night with me, but uh, I feel like I saw someone talking about Holy Mountain uh, recently. Like there was a 4K remastering of it. Yeah, there's a 4K restoration of the Holy Mountain. It's part of the restoration collection. It's
It
only
was co-produced by John Lennon,
it's
the
only
original film.
$55. You get Holy Mountain, Fando Ilis, El Topo, and I can't tell what this one says. Oh, it's just the cover art. Yeah, I think that's like some extra surreal stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's super surreal. It's an interesting film, though. I've watched it a couple of times, actually more than a couple of times. Saw it in the theaters too. Actually, there was a screening at one of the local uh, theaters in my neighborhood. It was interesting to see it on the big screen.
You know, this whole the whole pandemic thing. The theaters took a big hit initially, and a lot of them are, some of them are trying to open back up. I know AMC was trying to push to have their theaters open back up. I don't actually think that. I mean, if people want to take those kinds of risks, that's fine with me. I'm not too concerned with that. I tend to err on the side of caution. Like I'm just not going to take chances, especially when it's just as easy to wait and screen a film at home. Um, I wonder what. I guess I just don't understand why it's that much worth. Why it's worth it to people to tempt fate like that, or what kind of like thought process has to be occurring because I can't think of any movie that's been released in the last decade that I think I gotta go see this. I'm gonna risk exposing myself to who knows what in a room full of people who may or may not know that they're asymptomatic or whatever or pre-symptomatic. Like what kind of calculation does somebody have to make to decide that that's a good idea?
I think it's like a logical fallacy that they apply. That perhaps they've been so it's a couple of different types of people who would be doing it. There's a type of person who hasn't been really taking any precautions at all, who doesn't care,
We just got
and will
really
go,
lucky up to this point.
yeah, because or they haven't gotten it, or they were asymptomatic. They don't really keep track of it. They don't get tested, and they just go because they can. Then there are the people who have been, diligent up until a certain point, and they think that because they've been diligent up until a certain point, that diligence basically transfers into the movie theater because they've been so safe outside the movie theater. Um, them keeping a mask on is the minimum that they'll need to do inside the movie theater, but not taking into account all the other risks, especially the risk of people who have been less judicious in their personal practices and their social distancing and their personal monitoring and health, showing up to the same place as them.
Well, the second wave of coronavirus started in Europe like a week ago,
Yeah.
and what was it? 2 weeks ago, is it CDC? United States braces itself for a likely second wave of COVID. Um, we're only 6 months into this, and I feel like there's every time I go out, I see people who are just not wearing masks. They're just not even taking it seriously. The numbers are still going up, and not just going up, but they're rising every day. We're not flattening any curves. It just seems like recklessness. Maybe I'm just too sensitive to that. Maybe I'm on like too heightened of a state of alert for this. No, in the last 2 days, it's 2 days ago we had 41,000 new cases, and Yesterday there were 45,000 new cases.
Well, I was talking to somebody a few months ago, maybe a little more. They were like, yeah, there's no way that they're going to be, you know, a million deaths from the coronavirus. And I was thinking to myself, absolutely. And I said, there's actually a large possibility that we could reach that number from a longitudinal standpoint. Not like immediately, because apparently that's not how the virus works, and that's not how people don't expire as quickly from the virus. But there could be long-term effects that lead to or people in long-term care and intensive care units or on respirators for months at a time, and those um, those passings get added to the statistics for deaths due to coronavirus, and that could easily over the course of years, depending on how the risks end up getting mitigated or what kind of treatments arise or if there's an effective vaccine that's produced, and if large scale immunity is achieved across the country and then also subsequently across the world, so that way we can interact with other people from other countries without worrying about spreading different strains with different viral loads or different characteristics people could be more susceptible to or otherwise. That's something to consider. We could get to that million person mark.
Well, there's when I look at let's see, world meters. When I look at world meters, it says that there are total deaths 987,724.
In the world,
Yeah,
and that's reported.
yeah,
So the number could easily be higher already.
yeah.
And if we're adding tens of thousands of people infected every day, it's not. I know this is a relatively recent occurrence, chronologically speaking and geologically speaking, but it won't take too long to extrapolate what percentage of those infected will end up passing away.
Yeah. Or the long-term economic impact of having a member of the family who contracted COVID and didn't necessarily die, but they suffered some kind of inflammation that has compromised um, brain function or vascular function or pulmonary function.
Precisely, 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 and also the neurological effects of coronavirus are not yet fully understood. It has an effect on the nervous system, could have an effect on cognition. We don't know the effects of coronavirus fully on pregnancy and fetal development.
I wonder where that. I remember seeing a chart the other day, and it was referencing the total number of COVID-related fatalities. And actually, I think it was just fatalities um, over the years. It's like a CDC thing. Yeah, here we go. So it looks like from January of 2016 all the way up until January of 2020, like the death anomaly by week, it peaked in 2018 with about 5,000, but in January of 2019 it dropped down to negative 4,500, and then in the middle of what is this? Looks like April, May, the deaths shoot up to 25,000, and then it goes back down, and then by the end of July to August, it shoots back up to um, about 12,000. And so it records the excess deaths in 2020 is 259,825. And so there's another here's a CDC CDC statistical information. And so they got this really complex chart. It's updated daily, and it breaks down all deaths involving COVID. Total 189,000 deaths from all causes. 2 million percent of expected deaths. 111. That doesn't make any sense. Deaths involving pneumonia with or without COVID, excluding influenza. 193,000. Deaths involving COVID and pneumonia, excluding influenza, 85,000. Deaths involving influenza with or without COVID or pneumonia, includes COVID or pneumonia, 6,000. Deaths involving pneumonia, influenza, or COVID, 303,000. And I think it's the wording, the way that they describe these columns is actually kind of confusing. Um, all deaths involving COVID is still 189,000, but all deaths involving COVID, pneumonia, and influenza, it tallies up to 303,000. God, that's just so many fucking people.
That's, you know,
200,000 out of 2 million is 10%, right?
out of 10 million, you said?
Out of 2 million.
Oh, 2 million. That's what I was like.
2 million, 200,000 out of 2 million is 10%. That's still a lot. That's a huge fucking number.
Well, and like Daniel was saying, the people who are on uh, fucking breathing apparatus are like, there's going to be long term effects in a bunch of people that are going to end up being confounded or compounded with other, like, other things. It's not even just diseases because it's going to be, they might run out of money to pay for their medical coverage and then have to stop getting medicine, and then they're poor and they run out of food, and it's like not just recovering from COVID that ends up taking them out. And then they're like, well, they didn't die from COVID, but because they were in a, um, you know, all their money got sucked up by the medical bills, and then their body was all, you know, used up because of fighting it, and then they ran out of medicine. That's not necessarily dying from COVID, but COVID would be the cause of why they died. So there's going to be a bunch of those people that then the right wing's like, well, they didn't die coughing from COVID, so it's not COVID that caused it. And those people get to influence the conversation.
But
Well, those people have an agenda.
a lot of those people wouldn't have died if they not didn't have COVID, though, right? That's the whole point.
Exactly. Exactly. Like the people who get nuanced like that, um, and the ones who are nuanced like that in government, they're the ones who are like, send everyone back to work and you can all die and we don't care. And then, you know, everybody go to COVID lollipop parties and shit like that because they just want to make a buck, or they just want to satisfy their wealthiest constituents, or get the right kind of forecast out so that their, you know, country club buddies can, you know, get an uptick in their stock.
Does
And
letting
then the
people
people,
does letting people die increase job opportunity, or does it dramatically and drastically impact an economy? I just don't. I just can't wrap my head around any of the rhetoric that this isn't scary, or 200,000 dead people isn't that bad. or um, I guess there's a lot of projection going around with this whole thing, and we're being urged to get a flu shot, to help reduce the impact of the impending flu season. And China already announced, hey, that we've got this new flu that's coming around. We've found, and it's pretty bad. It's not like we don't know that this shit's coming. Do you think the people will listen though about the flu this time around?
No way.
Is
The
that
people who haven't listened before won't start listening now, but the people who have been getting the flu vaccine will probably get it. I got my flu vaccine.
yeah? They're only like $10, right? I think.
Mine was covered fully by my insurance, fortunately. I'm fortunate, so I
Yeah,
don't
but I
have
mean,
to
even
worry about
even
that.
for even for people who don't have insurance, I'm pretty certain flu shots are cheap. How much does a flu shot cost? 0 to $50.
Probably depends on the manufacturer and the distributor.
CVS, free flu shot, no cost with most insurance. Um, Walmart, Costco, CVS, Walgreens, Kroger, they all do flu shots. Kroger, between $40 and $60 out of pocket.
I saw there's like a quick air COVID test that's available for the airlines now, so that might be available here soon.
Saw an article about COVID sniffing dogs in Helsinki.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Apparently, they're highly accurate based off of the trials that they've put them through so far.
I wonder what COVID smells like to a dog.
Hopefully, not like pizza.
I wonder how they would react. Do they like smile at him and like, or just sit down at their feet? Dogs can smell cancer, so that makes sense that they would be able to smell somebody who's got the COVID, the Rona. COVID breath test. Coronavirus breathalyzer. 92% accuracy. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty damn good.
92% accuracy in a recent clinical trial. The device was developed by a team led by award-winning scientist Professor Hassam Hayek of the Wolfson. I don't want to see this pop up. Wolfson Faculty of Chemical Engineering at the Technicon, Technion, and Dr. Yoav
Oh, Technion.
Broza.
That's an Israeli university.
Okay, also of Technion, Russell Beer Nanotechnology Institute, in collaboration with researchers from Wuhan, China, where the novel coronavirus was first detected. Breathalyzers comprised of a nanomaterial-based hybrid sensor that can detect COVID-19 from specific volatile organic compounds, unique fingerprints for various forms of disease, in exhaled breath. According to the Technion, how do you say that?
Technion.
Technion. Results can be had in under a minute, and the test can be performed in a point-of-care facility without the need for extensive and expensive laboratory testing. Wow. Wow. COVID breathalyzer. We need this. Let you know in a minute. Make it cheap. Make it so anyone can buy one. Fuck. Make it so that you have to buy a new straw put a new straw in it every day. People, they'll make a shitload. Yeah. I'm 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 all for this. I'm all for a breathalyzer that analyzes for COVID.
It's highly unobtrusive, not intrusive.
That article I just found is from a month ago, August 23rd.
Should mass produce them, like you said.
Yeah, just mass produce the shit out of it. They'd be able to pay for all of their research for the next forever. Israeli firm developing a 30-second coronavirus breath test. And they're going to run a trial. They ran a trial in South Africa in June. Go Israel.
Yeah, as these things start to get easier to test or to have the quick tests accessible, um, then that type of approach will also work for other diseases. Even though obviously they'll need to get tests for specific. You can't use the corona test for the flu, obviously, but um, you know, there's things where sometimes people will get in a situation where they think they have the flu or something, and they're not reacting to the medicine and treatment, and then the doctor should be able to tell, if is this influenza or something else, and that's kind of where that type of quick access to results for different type of lung-based diseases or viruses is something that will definitely, it won't just be useful for COVID.
Well,
So now that shit is,
there's
what?
a paper test for influenza. So they could just couldn't maybe they could build this into like a color changing material, build that into tissue paper, your Kleenex. So you blow your nose and then you fold it over and you wait for 20 seconds and it changes color and it tells you what you got.
Yeah, that's probably not far off for something like that.
Or
Where
like a litmus paper kind of deal. You put it on your
Exactly.
tongue.
Kleenex, you guys can have this, okay? Just develop it.
Sorry, Chris. What were you saying?
well, I mean, in the sense of, yeah, as the technologies become more available, that type of product will be something that then, it might be $3 for a pack or whatever of five, and it's not something that's prohibitively expensive then either.
Yeah. It shouldn't be.
Like pregnancy tests didn't, weren't something that were always like a thing you could just walk in and buy off the shelf for so cheap. But that same thing is quickly happening with the COVID test.
Yeah. You know,
Speaking of advanced, oh, go ahead, Tim.
I was going to say, if the flu is as deadly as COVID is, they'd be developing testing systems for it as rapidly as they are for COVID. I think that's like the biggest indicator that it's not something to be just shrugged off. If it was just the flu, they wouldn't have this kind of response to it. There wouldn't be a global um, initiative to tool up and develop a vaccine or testing or you know to bolster the supply chain for protective equipment. The flu didn't trigger that. The common cold didn't trigger that. A brand new virus triggered that. Well, brand new version of a virus that we're sort of familiar with.
Well, and then on top of that, the things that were in place to respond to something like this being taken away to, there's a couple of things happening because on the one hand, there's lies saying, oh, they did this to try to keep panic down. But on the other hand, knowing that there were measures in place to try to fight something like this that were removed, it's like, yeah, there's definitely an attempted genocide against brown and black people happening in this country that they're trying to pretend is not happening. But then it's like this hypothetical scenario for the left or the pseudo left, but for brown and black people, it's a reality that then, because the left doesn't want to acknowledge it, they try to use this hypothetical scenario as like, oh, what if, if they get another term, then he'll be like Hitler and he'll start a genocide. And it's like, no, that shit's fucking happening already. And they're just like, it off as if it's not happening now. So they can just like not do anything themselves, but then also dismiss it. It's like this weird dismissal of, knowing this far into it that brown and black people are dying disproportionately and we're not the anti-maskers. Like, it's fucked up that the anti-maskers are not the ones dying disproportionately from COVID.
Yeah.
Like, somehow it's still the fucking poor black and brown people that are dying disproportionately, even though these fucking assholes want to go to Sturgis and go to their biker rallies and not wear masks in Target and shit and fucking spread that shit around. That's fucking the smallpox blankets. That's the smallpox blankets once again. So this is kind of where I'm like, this whole genocidal government that's been doing this shit for hundreds of years against the natives, still doing it against the natives because the natives are dying at disproportionate rates. And those are some of the brown people I speak of when I'm talking about it. But it's like, again, this is a genocide that's happening right now. It's not a hypothetical. And people are like, just vote. And they just want to act like that shit's not real, man.
Yeah.
Because it's the same, see people. It's weird because it's like, obviously both sides have their populations that ignore the genocide that's happening. But on the one hand, there's like the Second Amendment people who will ignore the genocide by cop. And then there's the left-wing people who ignore the genocide by fucking medicines, like healthcare or lack of healthcare system. And it's like those people who have jobs, who have insurance that'll cover their tests, don't give a fuck about the brown people that don't have insurance, that can't go to the fucking ER or can't go to the doctor whenever they're feeling sick and have to show up to work and can't get the test. And then those people are the ones that suffer the brunt of it the most. And then the people who on the left want to act like somehow those people can vote their situation better. That's not how that shit works. And they need to vote. People need to vote. Don't get me wrong. But we can't act like voting is going to change that shit. Voting isn't going to change that shit. Not at all. Even if Biden wins, it'll take fucking months before he gets into office.
So there's a study, um, and they determined that as a result of discrimination against African American populations in the United States over the course of the last 20 years, some $16 trillion um, ha- just wasn't realized. And they 16 trillion figure came about from 13 trillion lost in potential business revenue because of discriminatory lending to African American entrepreneurs, and they estimate that there were over 6 million jobs that were not realized, um, some 2.7 million in income that was lost because of disparities in wages suffered by African Americans. I'm just thinking, let's say black people. Um, 218 billion lost over the past 2 decades because of discrimination in providing housing credit. 90 billion to 113 billion in lifetime income lost from discrimination in accessing higher education.
Yeah, for a long time, a theme that I've noticed and that I've been bringing up with, family and friends is that when I kind of became aware of it, because I spent a lot of life not being aware of it, but when I finally really took notice of what was happening, it was very much like a culling practice, essentially. It's like a social culling, but it's also a cultural culling that's being enacted through socioeconomic means and the systematic lack of equity and equitable, not lack of equity, but lack of equitable treatment of Black people in comparison to white people or other denominations that have more opportunities is a clear indication that there is a severe disparity that has been constructed in order to basically get I don't even know if it's about keeping people in line anymore. It just seems like people are kept vulnerable so that way they can be pushed out of the way more easily regardless of what that even means. Like people's lives have been ascribed a dollar value, and people's lives have become very, very cheap or inexpensive just because of where they live or where they've been essentially forced to live through generational political practices and racist political infrastructure. And I think that also determines the kind of healthcare that they get access to or no access to. And because they're not able to, let's just say Black people in this instance, Black people aren't able in as a great a ratio to get access to the right kind of job that provides the right kind of benefits. That means they can't get the right kind of health care. And then unfortunately, there are situations where they do get the right kind of job and the right kind of benefits in healthcare, but the people providing the healthcare are part of essentially an implicitly biased system that leads to them not being afforded or provided the same level of care or medical treatment. And it really is care. It's like, how much does somebody care about somebody else? Like how much does the doctor care? Do they know that they care less? And then that kind of gets back to the valuation of life, and the valuation of life being a factor of physical appearance, and then the use of physical appearance to determine where somebody should exist and how unfair that is.
Yeah, it's eugenics.
Yes, it is eugenics. Eugenics has a storied history in the United States. Um, it was picked up by Germany in the I mean, it basically made its way across Europe. I know that there were the atavistic stigmata that came out of Italian medicine, kind of made their way to the United States. There was a lot of, with all of the trade and the colonialism, there had to be some sort of scientific and empirical, pseudoscientific justification for everything that these people were doing, just to make them feel like empowered about what they were doing. Not just It's not just because they wanted to basically enslave people and get other people to do the heavy lifting for them and not get compensated or treated like human beings. It was really a matter of, how do we create some sort of false scientific premise that allows us to treat people poorly, and that just ended up getting ingrained into people's culture. It's like, you hear people talking about how, black people look physically, or how Jewish people look physically, or how Asian people look physically, and saying because they look a certain way physically, that means certain things about their capabilities or their intelligence or their personalities, or their personal idiosyncrasies or proclivities, where there's just as much individual variation within one demographic as there is in another demographic. And it's just the cultural determinant that basically leads to whether or not these eugenics-based pseudoscientific rationales hold as much weight and carry as much gravity within somebody's own psyche, because once it's trained into some number of generations, it's so hard to purge it.
My inner cynic thinks that the language of eugenics just goes over the heads of most people. Like, all they hear is, "Hey, y'all are great. I think you're a great group, the best group, bigly." And and I feel like understanding or even recognizing that language requires, a quality of exposure to history that hasn't been curated, and ideas that aren't spoon fed. And it actually requires a little bit of training to recognize when the language of eugenics is being used. I don't think it's obvious to people. I get the impression that the way that it's used, it appeals to the most basic sense of, oh, I'm being complimented, and that's it. And I think that's why it's
Well,
so insidious.
it's also insidious in the sense of looking at popular culture from certain generations, especially like cartoons
Mm,
and various animations, because if you have like entire generations of kids growing up laughing at the way, people of color, or black people, or Asian people, or European people, or whatever, just laughing at them and feeling like they're number one because they get to laugh at these people because of their physical differences, or because their voices sound different because they're not used to speaking your language. So you get to look down on them because you're laughing at them. Or your favorite cartoon character is imitating someone from another country in a very racist and discriminatory way.
yeah.
But, it's on national syndicated television. So, what do you know? Your parents aren't telling you don't watch this. Maybe they're sitting and watching it with you and laughing. But at the same time, you sit down to dinner and you talk about racial injustice and inequity without the lesson of, what you watched this morning for Saturday morning cartoons is just as racist as the people we're trying to basically get out of office. And then that ends up being like, a cognitive dissonance there. That's how people, end up becoming adults, or, even grandparents, not thinking that they're racist, but actually having that implicit racial bias.
Yeah. It, again, this system is just so full of the bias where looking for places where it doesn't exist becomes that's, and I guess like I'm I'm like trying to figure out where these people are that always talk about moving after elections, because it's like those people who always were like, "Oh, if my candidate doesn't win, I'll move to Canada or some shit." Where are they at? Because let's get those people and move out of this fucking country and mobilize somewhere if y'all serious, or else shut the fuck up about that. You know, because I'm real tired of people who are like, "Oh, if this so and so wins, this country's going to hell." Like, no, we're already there. Let's do something about it. Either let's leave or like let's build something else, because this shit is not working. We can't just vote our way out of this shit. That's not how it works. The
I
racist.
think it's meant to be hyperbolic. Actually,
Yeah.
I don't think people are really serious. I think they're like, unless they really have the means to move. And then even then, after the election, the country didn't want us. So, like, good luck with that one.
I mean, aside from the $500 processing fee and the $100 right of citizenship fee, and this is for an adult. Um, there's you have to live in Canada for some period of time. I think it's like several years, and you have to like you have to have a job there. You've got to spend a significant portion of the year there. Um,
Don't you still have to pay taxes to the U.S. if you're an expatriate?
no, if you
Yeah. Take
expatriate, I think
out. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you cash out. You have to pay the United States government, I think. Um, costs
Yeah. Again, it's like, and
twenty-three
even
hundred dollars, $2,400.
it's like, you know, if it was a real rebellion, motherfucker, I ain't paying you $2,300 not to fucking pay taxes on my work that you didn't help me do shit on.
Yeah,
Fuck that. Not if it's a real rebellion. That's just perpetuating their bullshit. No, I ain't like, nah. It's like this is um
It's the rebellion tax.
right. I'm not my slave master is not getting any reparations for my freedom.
so it's like a $4,000 to move to Canada and to relinquish or renounce U.S. citizenship and to become a Canadian citizen. But you also have to have a job. You also have to be able to afford to move all your stuff into another country. You've got to be able to secure housing. You got to pay in.
That's why you know you're a hostage.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I'm saying I ain't paying to get out of this shit. It's motherfucking like when I'm escaping the United States plantation, I'm not paying master to get out of here. And motherfuckers need to understand that's what this shit is. Like when Kanye said it, he said it wrong. He didn't get it right. The plantation never went away.
It just got bigger.
It just got bigger, and they just got better at hiding that shit. And
Change the names of things.
yep.
You know,
So,
if I thought that if I was in another country and some horrible shit went down, that, you know, some kind of U.S. world police would come out of nowhere and save my ass, that would be one thing. But I know that's not the case because when I went to China, we had to get a special insurance policy that that said that if there was some like horrible situation, a private security team would show up with a helicopter and extract us, and that wasn't cheap. That was the kind of thing where it's like, oh shit, but that didn't happen because China's actually a fairly peaceful place, and their own police force is that are highly organized and goddamn, their firefighting squads have rockets, firefighting rockets. They've got people deployed all over the country that know how to use truck-mounted rocket launchers that can fire into a burning window, into a room in a burning skyscraper, with pinpoint accuracy, laser accuracy. Our firefighters don't have fucking anti-fire rockets. And realistically, it wouldn't take very long to change out that system and put in like a real rocket launcher. China's organized as fuck. No weird shit's gonna happen that some U.S. private security firm has to send in their people to save American citizens, not normal citizens.
Yeah, and well, that's like when they sent those spies. They sent the two
Oh my god, these are the
guys
two
they
whitest
could
dudes they could find.
They sent four white dudes on a boat
for white guys
into a hurricane.
Four of the whitest motherfuckers you could have possibly sent into an Asian country. They're gonna stand out like a sore goddamn thumb because these idiots can't think that far ahead, and they're not smart enough or unracist enough to hire non-white fucking spies.
So the only place that they might be able to get away with something like that is Hong Kong because British colonialism. I remember when I was in Hong Kong, when I was in China, I used to walk up to the front desk and ask them in my most Hoosier tone, "Hey, can you all help me find a restroom?" And they would always look at me like I was crazy. But I get to Hong Kong, and there's this Caucasian white lady behind the desk, and I asked her the question, and she had this really distinctly, I've lived in China my entire life, and I learned English in school as a second language accent, and it threw me off. So that's like the one place where I can see sending in, the white insurrection squad, and they might be able to pass, but only if they speak Chinese natively.
But that's because in that specific area, the agent provocateurs are like specifically Asian American Chinese people that are like speaking English, subverting the local movement by like spouting American propaganda. So that's where it's like, yeah, the only reason they fit in there is because the spies and the agent provocateurs there are Chinese because they're trying to make them fit in specifically there because they're not. It's like it's this weird. Yeah, man, spy games are real, but the people coordinating them are not always the smartest.
Just like throw spaghetti onto a wall and I hope it sticks, and then like divine plan from the pattern it forms.
Well, we
James Bond shit.
Well, we know that our spook system is flawed. I mean, they sent a bunch of guys into Venezuela and they all got caught. I feel like Charlie Sheen from Navy SEALs era movie production would be really disappointed. I mean, how can we send in guys and they get caught and then be taken seriously?
Yeah, all the stories like in real life they don't turn out like they do in the movies, and then you hear shit like in the Niger Delta where they end up fucking each other up and they don't even get close to doing their mission because one of the fucking undercover cells attacks another undercover cell on accident and they end up just undercovering each other. It's like, that shit happened. I didn't make that up. They fucked up that bad. It made it sound like a horrible joke. That's how bad they fuck up. Like, no, I'm just quoting like a real event. They just fuck up that bad. But
Exceptional Radio.
Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio.